Okay, mirase. Okay, so Yachimo, that means greetings. I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Randa Hempata Akan Odwirafo of Akwamuma and Amarukati Vimudi Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojirama and the Purified Nation, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. We're just back on tonight. We wanted to touch on another aspect of Susuw, which is the Akan term for meditation, a different expression related to Susuw or a part of the practice of Susuw. This is in the lead up to our upcoming Susuw meditation instructor certification course. That actually starts Tuesday, June 18th, which is tomorrow. If you would like to join that course, go to our website. And we're going to have more information about that, but you can become an instructor, a meditation instructor certified. So once you have your certification, you can go to different organizations, schools, places of employment, events, and so forth. People may pay you $100, $200 to conduct meditation sessions once or once a week or once every other week or once a month or whatever you work out. This is a way to empower the community while also being engaged in entrepreneurial endeavor. So that begins June 18th. We have a few spaces left open available for the certification course. This is the first one that we're doing. We talked about that a little bit. Let me just pull up this document before we get into I'm going to show you the flyer real quick, and then we'll get into the topic for tonight. Okay, let me expand this very quick. Okay, so this is the flyer that we put forward, the Susuw Meditation Instructor certification course. Information is there, and you'll see that page on the website. But this is one of the reasons we've done a few broadcasts or lives over the past week and a half on the Susuw tradition, properly centering the practice of Susuw, the practice of meditation rooted in our ancestral culture. And we get into some more details that most, other organizations either are unaware of or they don't get into that aspect of it. Let me show you once again, for those who may have missed this, we're just going to touch on quickly the etymology of the terms. This is part of the course, but we just want to show it once again for people who are not on with us over the past week and hadn't seen this document. Just to give you some background. So if you're unfamiliar, you see we're using the term Susuw for meditation. And this is an ancient term. On the right side, you see Susuw. This is from the Akan dictionary, the Tree dictionary, which is the Akan language. Akan people make up the plurality, or actually the majority in the country of Ghana, in West Afuraitkaitnit, West Africa, as well as the plurality of the population in Cote d'Ivoire, or Ivory Coast, which is right next door to Ghana, in West Afuraitkaitnit, West Africa. About 26 million Akan people on the continent, one of the largest ethnic groups on the continent, and one of the largest ethnic groups from whom we were taken and forced into North Central South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Susuw, the Great Perversity, the Enslavement era. So many of us are actually of Akan descent, but we show that the Akan language, and we've published a number of articles and books on this information. To date, I've published 31 books. We have some more books coming out. You can download all of the 31 books for free from our website. We'll pull that up later in the broadcast. But part of what we've done is shown the direct genetic link, spirit genetic link, including linguistic, of the Akan people migrating directly from ancient Kanit Nubia, and Kemet, Egypt, to the western part of the continent, reestablishing the Khan Empire, or Akan Empire, ancient Kana or Ghana, over 2,000 years ago. About 1,000 years later, some people, because of Muslim invasions, some of our people migrated from the Empire of Ghana further south towards the forest belt, reestablished the Akan civilization in the forest belt, and hundreds of years later, some of us were taken from that region and forced into the Western Hemisphere during the enslavement era. And this is how we came from ancient Khanit and Kemet, Nubian Egypt, to the western part of the continent, to the forest belt, and in the Western Hemisphere, but we maintained our ancestral religious practices. That's true of the Akan people, as well as the people in the Congo and the Yoruba and the Igbo and the Fula and Basa and various other groups, Ewe and so forth. So you'll find us maintaining our same religious practices in the Western Hemisphere. So as we've published and we even released a documentary recently, back in October, on the Hoodoo tradition, which is the Akan ancestral religion in North America. We released a documentary previously, a few years back, where we talked about the Voodoo tradition, which is the Ewe tradition in North America, the Juju tradition, which is the Yoruba tradition in North America, the Wanga tradition, which is the Ovambo tradition in North America, the Ngangan tradition, which is the Fang ancestral religion in North America. So we've maintained our practices, maintained our linguistic, usages and definitions and so forth. This is one proof of that. So on the right, you'll see Susuw. You'll see the definition. It says to measure, to calculate the capacity of, to sound, to search or measure the depth of, to think, imagine, suppose, to think on, reflect upon, to consider, to meditate. So Su, first and foremost, is to measure. It's measuring the depth of something, which is, in this context, your spirit. Calculate the capacity of your spirit. That's a form of measure, to think upon, to reflect upon. That's Susuw. In the language of ancient Khanit and Kemet, from the Medut Ntoro, the hieroglyphic dictionary and so forth, the term Su is a measure of length. The root term, and you also see Su means drink or to drink. You'll also find in the Akan language, Su means drink or to drink as well. So the reason why that's important, the root of the term Susuw is Su, of course. That's a reduplication of that, a doubling principle you find across Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, and African languages. The root is Su, and it's meaning to measure. Susuw in Akan means to measure. And when you're measuring yourself, reflecting upon the structure of your spirit, your spiritual anatomy, that is quote unquote meditation, but it's rooted in measuring. You find it in the Akan language today, as spoken today. When you look back thousands of years ago, Su also means to measure and so forth. Now, then we show the term meditate. What is the etymological origin of meditate? You'll see that to ponder, think abstractly, engage in mental contemplation. From the Proto-Indo-European root, or PIE root, Proto-Indo-European root, med, and med means take appropriate measures. So once again, we're talking about measurement. Meditate, the root of meditation or to meditate is med, which means to take appropriate measure or to measure. Now, that is not a Proto-Indo-European root in the true sense, in the real sense. They stole that terminology from ancient Kemet. Thousands of years before Europeans existed on Earth, we were using the term meh, as you can see, which is in English is translated as the royal cubit, but we didn't call it the royal cubit. We called it the meh. Meh is the cubit. Meh Nsu, as you can see right here, is the Nsu, the royal. Meh, that's the royal cubit, but the cubit or the meh is the central unit of measurement in ancient Khanit and Kemet. So all the temples, tombs, shrines, everything that you're using to measure roads and buildings and everything else is based upon that unit of measurement, which we call meh, the unit of measurement. That was corrupted into med, meaning to measure. And that's the root of meditate, to measure. So even their definition comes directly from ancient Khanid and Kemet, and the descriptive practice of that, the operationalizing of that principle, of that measuring, is Susuw. Because when you're measuring the depth of something, calculating the depth of something, your spirit, measuring the depth of that, you're operationalizing the measurement, through the practice of Susuw. So that's why we utilize that terminology. Okay. Now we want to get into the subject matter. Okay, so for tonight, we're calling it Sacred Forms, Healing Recalibration through Susuw meditation. So you'll often see these images, sacred statuary from ancient Kemet, murals, paintings, all kinds of quote unquote artwork and so forth. But these are sacred forms for healing and recalibration through the practice of Susuw. So we don't just create artwork for the sake of artwork. They're utilized as matrices to invoke the power, energy of the forces in nature, as well as our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. So let's look at that. So let me give you an example first, and then we're going to get into some detailed information. One of the images that you just saw, well, the image on the flyer here, this is actually an image of Het Heru. So let's pull up another image of her. Hold on a second. Actually, no, let's pull up this one. Okay, I want to give you a clear image of that specific piece. Okay. So when we were in Apet Asedu a couple of years ago, which is misnomer Karnak in ancient Kemet, we had a study tour there and so forth. This is in the temple of Kangsu, misnomer Konsu, in the precinct of the female divinity Mut, in that region of Apet Asedu, which is misnomer Karnak and so forth. This is the sovereign, the king, Ramesu, making an offering. And then behind him, you see Het Heru. And what's important about this image, I want to expand it a little bit. Now, if you look at her hands, you see the little wavy lines of energy above her hands. So those wavy lines of energy in the Medutu, in the hieroglyphs, you'll also see that wavy line here. On one hand, it's the wavy, sometimes it's shown as a water line, so representing water and so forth. But it's also the sound, the specific Medut or the glyph for the letter N. So it's up, down, up, down, up, down. And actually a truncated version of that, up, down, and up, is the English letter capital N. Up, down, up. When you take a stroke up, stroke down, stroke up, then that's the letter N. If you keep going, it's taken directly from this. And we've shown in, different publications how the alphabet utilized by Europeans, as well as Sanskrit and everything else, stolen directly from ancient Khanid and Kemet. So They never created an alphabet. That is true. The Greeks, the Romans, misnomered so-called Hebrews and so forth, and Proto-Sinaitic and so forth. All of those scripts are simply corruptions of our ancient script. So Europeans never created a script at all. It's taken directly from this. So you see that up, down, up, down, up. That's the symbol for the letter N. But the sound is the sound, so it's a vibratory, energetic force. And we know that. So when she's holding when it's hovering above her hands, she's showing that she has the capacity to project life force energy and utilize it for a healing and recalibrating purpose. So this is the divinity standing behind Ramesu while he's making an offering to divinity and so forth. And she's assisting in that process to recalibrate him spiritually. And when we see these images, we're not just looking at, images because they are nice to look at. When we project our energy into a geometric form, then it activates the geometric form, and then there's a feedback mechanism that stimulates us. The same thing with different colors and geometric forms. When you project your life force energy through a certain form, for example, even on a mundane level, if you have a spout, you take the stopper out of the bathtub and so forth. Once the water goes down, it starts spinning, going down. That spinning action generates a field of energy, a suction, and so to speak. When you project your life force energy by focusing on a certain form, like a circular form, like the solar disk, and it moves through that geometric form, it generates a certain field of energy. If it's a triangular form, the energy moving in that triangular fashion generates a different frequency of energy. If it's an octagon, a square, or some combination thereof, based on the geometric form, there's a specific configuration of energy that is generated. And once it's, released and you absorb that, then it has an impact on your spirit. This is why we have specific geometric forms with specific colors that are utilized in the quote unquote artwork, because when we project our energy into them, we stimulate the energy of the color as well as the geometric form, and it reverberates back to us and stimulates our spirit, different aspects of our spirit in a measurable fashion. Now, give another example of this. So that was in the Temple of Khonsu in the precinct of Mut, Aperasetu, and so forth. Now, I want to give you the next one. All right. And so you see, she's the female divinity. So that was Heru. Now, when I was in Kemet the first time, and I went to Kemet by myself the first time, this is in the valley, quote unquote, Valley of the Kings. In the Valley of the Kings, you go into the valley, the tombs are underground and so forth. The only tomb that has, the mummy inside the tomb, because all the other mummies are in the museum and so forth. But in the Valley of the Kings, the only tomb, all the, the murals and so forth are in the underground tombs and everything else. But the only tomb in the Valley of the Kings that has the mummy still or placed there is the tomb of Tutankhamen, misnomered, King Tut and so forth, but Tutankhamen, which is the living image of Amen and so forth. This is in his particular tomb, the walls in his tomb. So when you go down into his tomb, you'll see his body there. But then on the walls, you'll see the various images. This is an image of him, Tutankhamen. And then you'll see the female divinity, Nut. And Nut is the female divinity you'll see bent over the earth and so forth, her body bent over. Just like in yoga, they have downward dog and so forth. That's really stolen from the goddess Nut, who is arched over the earth. She's the spiritual force that governs the atmosphere of earth and so forth. But this is Nut. And when you look closely, you will see that she has so you'll see that she's standing next to the sovereign, the king, and so forth, the Pera, Pharaoh, called Pera in Ancient Kemet. And she has the wavy lines of energy, the energetic force in her hands as well. And so once again, she's projecting that energy, and you'll see different movements. And man, when you see people projecting like this, that's a provocation of energy. Just like if you're pushing, even with martial artists or people practicing qigong and so forth, or sacred ancestral Afuraitkaitnit religious practices, ritual dance, and you see people pushing that way, that's a provocation of energy. When you see them this way, they can be receiving, they can be giving, but also receiving energy and so forth. So ritual convocation, provocation, different expressions. But once again, you'll see this wavy line of energy hovering above the hands. So this whole notion, and you'll see this with people who are teaching and going back to our traditional practice of using hands to heal. In North America, we'll say the laying on of hands, and people will assume that came from church. But before we were going into church, we were practicing hoodoo and juju and wanga and voodoo and ingengang and so forth. And we were already engaged in the process of laying hands as part of ancestral religious practices. And we brought that into the churches when we were forced to go into that. But we carried that practice with us. But it goes all the way back here, and we have the representative, murals to prove that. And these are just two of them. This is the Valley of the Kings, that's different from Asediu or so-called Karnak and so forth. But there you'll find this all over Ancient Kemet. Now, before I switch over to, hold on a second. Okay. Now we want to switch over and show some more images. Before we do that, we're going to show something. Hold on 1 second. Let me switch this back out. Okay, so this is our book, Umen the Ancestral Summons. And we talk about ritual practices. In this book is information that comes from our ancestral culture. This is the first book I published myself. But it's more so, this particular book is different because it's really just sharing the wisdom of the Nsamanfo, the ancestors and ancestors, commenting on the nature of our ritual practices. So hold on 1 second. There's just one piece I want to pull up real quick. Okay. So we are talking about the sacred forms of the divinities in the context of healing and recalibration and so forth. So when we talk about the forces in nature, the Abosom, as they are called in the Akan tradition, the Orisha, as they're called in Yoruba, the Vodou, as they're called in the Ewe tradition, the Arusi, as they're called in Igbo, but the spirits that animate, just like you have the sun, moon, planets, earth mother, oceans, rivers, every aspect of creation, the black substance of space that we're dependent upon. We're dependent on the sun, moon, oceans, earth mother, mountains, atmosphere, all of that. We're dependent on all of that. In the same fashion, the spiritual forces that animate the sun, that animate the moon, that animate the oceans, that animate the earth mother, that animate the black substance of space, and so forth. Our spirit bodies are dependent upon that energy, just like our physical bodies are dependent upon, the physical features of creation. The spiritual forces that animate creation are the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the Mtorutu, the divinities, the goddesses and gods, and so forth. And they are depicted in ancient Kemet. So when we engage in Susuw meditation, and sometimes people say, well, what is your focus? Are you just focused on the, nothingness? Not in our ancestral culture. That's misinformation from Hinduism and other things. But we have a specific focus or purpose when we engage in ritual practice. And sometimes what we're doing is communicating with an ancestral spirit, communicating with the divinity, or starting off focusing on the image of divinity, which takes us into a form of communication. So first we need to know what these forces of nature, how they are, what their nature, their structure is. And this is what we've been saying this particular page is talking about. So let me expand it a little bit. So it'll be easier for you to check out. Okay, hold on a second. All right, so again, this is what our ancestresses and ancestors share with us as elders and eldresses, about the nature of the Abosom, Orisha, the goddesses and gods and so forth. God has emissaries, representatives in creation. So we're talking about what is the structure? Who are the forces in creation? So they state movement presupposes energy. And these are the forces, images that we utilize in the healing, recalibration, purification process through Susuw, through meditation. Movement presupposes energy. Movement, energy, vibrations reveals sound. Such vibrations are essential to the manifestation of time. So first, you talk about movement generates sound. Of course, we see that just in the physical world. You can have a string that's tight. You pluck the string when it vibrates, like a guitar and so forth, it generates a sound. If you take a rope and you whip it around in a circle, whirl it around, it creates a whistling sound. So movement generates sound. Your vocal cords vibrating generates sound. So movement itself generates sound. Even you have protons and neutrons in a molecule that are being orbited by electrons and so forth. That movement at the molecular level generates a certain configuration of sound vibrations. So all movement generates sound in some form. And we say such vibrations are essential to the manifestation of time, because once movement first began in the beginning of creation and so forth, now things can be measured, and that's where time comes into play. And that's a term, abere in Akan means time, but that's a sacred process. That's when time comes into being. So we say creation is governed by time. Time orders, measures the cyclical manifestation of power that things may come into existence. All things produce emanations which are reflective of power, which is governed by time. Vibratory waves may be manifest as longer or shorter. Vibratory rates may be faster or slower, from beginning to ending to beginning, from light to dark to light, from expansion to contraction and back to expansion. All wavelengths, all rates come into being as various representatives of creative power. So when things move, they generate sound vibrations. If they move fast, you have a higher pitched sound vibration. Something's moving slower, It's a lower pitched vibration and so forth, but movement is generating these vibrations. Things start vibrating like the wavy line we saw, that energetic line, that movement. If it's moving fast, higher pitched sounds, and those things have an effect on us. Lower pitched sounds have an effect. In European culture, now they talk about sound therapy, trying to separate it out from practice and so forth. They'll have aroma therapy, sound therapy, color therapy, talk therapy. They'll try to separate these things out and make them separate disciplines. In a holistic sense, those things have always been part of our ancestral culture. Ritual prayer in our sacred languages, a collection of sound vibrations. They will call that sound therapy, but they really can't affect that. You need to have a sacred language, an Afuraitkaitnit or African language to affect sound, quote unquote, therapy. The unique configuration of vibrations in our languages stimulate our physical bodies and our spirit bodies in a specific fashion. The unique configuration of colors in sacred, quote unquote, artwork, guided by the Abosom and Nsamanfo, stimulate us in a specific fashion. So the unique smells and so forth that come directly from plant life and mineral life and so forth in nature affect us in a specific fashion, and we're directed by the forces in nature on how to procure plant life and mineral life and mix it in a certain fashion to create certain colors, but also certain medicines and so forth to stimulate our healing process in different ways. Now, every representative phase of creative power vibrating through space generates its own sound or sounds. Sound imbues space with colors corresponding to the nature of the vibration. We say it's sunlight not broken into a band of colors, a rainbow, when refracted by rain or mist. So, of course, when you see a rainbow, broken up by rain or mist, or you see sunlight moving through rain or mist. And let's just show this real quick. In one of our books, we touch on this. I'll go out of this screen real quick just so you can see this image. This is our book, Inyokompon, Ra and Ra'et. And we're just showing in this book that in the Akan language, Inyokompon is the name for the creator of the universe, and Inyokompon is the creatress, but that is Ra and Ra'et in ancient Kemet. And then we show how they manifest in Akan culture, in Yoruba culture, in Ewe culture, in, different expressions. You'll see the name spelled with the serpent, the cobra serpent, encircling the sun disk. The circle with the dot in the middle is the solar disk and so forth. So their names are spelled with the serpent encircling the disk. Ra and Ra'et, the little loaf of bread represents the tea and so forth. And they'll also wear that serpent on the headdress as well. But the reason why that's important is because, as we said, you shine light through a prism, it breaks up into a band of colors. So this light energy moving through a prism breaks up into a band of colors. Light or energy moving through rain, refracted or bent by rain or mist, breaks that energy up into a number of different colors. And sound does the same thing. Sound energy moving through space generates colors as well. And then we also show, just to prove a little bit, when you see this imagery in Kemet of the circle with the dot in the middle, they always say, well, that represents, Ra as well as Ra'et. The rainbow serpent encircling the sun, the rainbow serpent encircling the moon and so forth. When you see the imagery of the serpent encircling the sun or the moon, the original is that sun halo or the moon halo, that is the original glyph from ancient Kemet. This is where the glyph comes from. It comes from nature itself. And that's why you talk about the rainbow serpent in different cultures, whether it's ancient Khanid Kemet, the Akan tradition. You have a dual rainbow here. In the Vodun tradition, this is in Abome. You'll see, hold on a second. You'll see Da and Aidahuedo. Da, the great rainbow serpent, creator of the universe. Aidahuedo, the great serpent, the creatress of the universe. The rainbow serpent encircling its, the sun and swallowing its tail and so forth. In Vodun, same thing. Da, the rainbow serpent, is Ra in ancient Kemet. That's Yonkumpon in Akan, who's also called Edanga and so forth. So, you see the serpent governing the head and the foot in that particular piece. And we also talk about how in the Yoruba tradition, Oshumare and Odumare are the dual rainbow serpent, swallowing the tail, circular serpent, and so forth, the creator and creatress of the universe. So this is what we're getting at when you're talking about energy moving through space, generating colors and so forth. That's what the text is dealing with. This is the beginning of form and function. So every spiritual force moving through space generates its own sound. Sound imbues space with colors corresponding to the nature of the vibration. Is sunlight not broken into a band of colors, a rainbow when refracted by rain or mist? So when the spiritual energy moves through space, if it's moving fast, it's generating a higher pitched sound. Spiritual force moving through the blackness of space, moving slower, lower pitched sound. But the movement itself is generating that fire, and that fire breaks up into rain or mist, moving through sound, and you have different colors and so forth. The different colors are based on the speed of movement, expansion and contraction of the different force in creation. A fiery force has a more rapid, expansion and contraction. A watery force or earthy force has a slower expansion and contraction. The fiery forces generate these fiery colors like orange and red and yellow and so forth, and the slower moving energy generate darker colors like brown and black and all of that. So that's what we're talking about. Collections of sounds are groupings of various vibrations together, generating geometric patterns in space. Does rapid movement vibration not generate heat? Is heat not expansive? Does expansion not call forth contraction, cooling? Are expansion and contraction not essential as dynamics of form? Are heat and cooling not essential as dynamics of form on the physical plane? So we said collections of sounds are groups of various vibrations, and they generate geometric patterns in space. Now let's look at that real quick. We're going to pull up another document. Hold on 1 second. One particular document, we had some imagery in that document that had to do with this notion of sound. So we want to pull that up. Just give me a second. And I had this up earlier, so just give me 1 second. Of course, if you have any questions in the chat room, of course, you can post them. All right. Okay, so let me go back out so you can see this document. So you're talking about these geometric forms that are generated by sound. So in the Akan tradition, we have Adinkra symbols, and many of these Adinkra symbols, the basic forms. In the Akan tradition, you'll find these same Adinkra symbols making up the Medutu, the hieroglyphs in ancient Kemet, and so forth. But these different Adinkra symbols are geometric forms that represent different divinities. Each one has a proverb associated with it, but they also represent different energy complexes and are used on shrines, also on sacred clothing and so forth. They represent different divinities, forces in creation. They're the same as what Europeans would call sigils and so forth. They're utilized as matrices of power, magnetically drawing certain divinities and ancestral spirits into the space ritually. So, just to give some, so you see some of these symbols, but let's expand it a little bit. There are hundreds of Adinkra symbols, but what we did here is what we did, we compared them with what is called cymatics. And as you can see, if you look at the internal structure, and cymatics is, they will play a certain tone on a piano, and then they'll have water there, and then they'll capture the electromagnetic vibrations that affect the water in a specific way. And the water vibrates when certain tones are played. And when certain tones are played, you'll see the tones here. Let me expand it a little bit. Okay. So you'll see D1 sharp, E1, F1, F1 sharp, G, and so forth. So different tones are played. The only difference between tones, sounds like E and F and G and so forth, are the rates of vibration. So different rates of vibration are played. They have the water there. The vibrations affect the water. And each tone generates a specific geometric form in the water, and then they capture it, digitally. If you look at the internal structure of each one of these sounds, D1, sharp, E1, F1, G, and all of that, look at the internal structure, they manifest the same Adinkra symbols, and each one of the Adinkra symbols, as we've always taught and practiced, are actual matrices of energy of specific divinities, meaning the energy of a divinity, if it's a fiery divinity, has a certain vibration. If it's a watery divinity, it's a different vibration. The earth divinity is a different vibration. An atmospheric divinity is a different vibration, and so forth. The differences between the forces in creation, they generate different sound vibrations, different energetic effects, and their energy, when it's projected into space, when they move through space, they generate certain colors, and they generate certain geometric forms. Cymatics recently has simply proven or confirmed what we've always utilized for thousands of years. The movement of different spirit forces through space generates specific configurations of geometric patterns. And you can see the internal structure of each one. And of course, people dealing with cymatics, scientists dealing with cymatics didn't know anything about Adinkra symbols. So you look at this Adinkra symbol, look at the internal structure, you'll find it's the same thing. You look at this internal structure of E1 being played, and you'll see the internal structure is the Nyame Dria Akan symbol. You look at this structure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you'll see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the Nanse Ntontine symbol and so forth. And each one, and this is just a handful of them. We just pulled out a few of them. You'll see the internal structure in each G1, G1 sharp, C1 sharp, D1, and so forth. You'll find that across the board. So that simply confirms what our people have been saying and what we've been practicing for thousands of years. When we don't create Adinkra symbols, the Abosom, the forces in nature, direct us to create these symbols according to their nature, and they will tell us, this is our symbol. Through spirit possession, they will draw the symbol out, direct us to replicate that symbol, tell us through spirit possession the name of the symbol, make us repeat the name of the symbol, and so forth. When the spirit possession is over, we know what the symbol is, we know the name of the symbol, we know how to pronounce it, and so forth, and we use it specifically for that divinity. That's how these symbols came about in our Khan tradition, Yoruba tradition, Neve tradition, ancient Khanid and Kemet, and so forth. Whenever we have sacred symbols, this is where they come from. They are matrices of energy specific to specific forces in creation. So when you meditate and you focus your energy to one of these symbols and it starts moving through that specific form, it generates a field of energy unique to that specific deity's energy. And once that energy is expanded in the space and it's absorbed by you, you can realign yourself with that energy and purify yourself. Just like if you have, as we said before, if you have incense, like some rock incense, some frankincense or myrrh, Heju or Antiu, as it's called in ancient Kemet, the Heju is the white resin, Antiu is the red resin, which is frankincense and myrrh and so forth. If you have some rock incense sitting on a shelf, you just have it sitting on the shelf. If you put fire to it, then all of a sudden, the entire space fills up with the smoke, the energy of the smoke. And then you absorb that. And of course, frankincense as well as myrrh is not only something that smells pleasant and so forth, but it also has a healing effect on certain organs and glands, and it can be utilized in the healing capacity. It can be utilized in the healing capacity physiologically, but also spiritually. So, but once you add fire to it, you expand its, force and power, and it fills up the space, and you absorb that, and then you realign yourself with it physically and spiritually. When you project your energy, quote unquote, fire into a sacred geometric form, then it expands the energy. It creates a specific energetic field based on that geometric form, which comes from a divinity. That energy is filling up the space, and then you absorb and realign yourself with that. Sometimes spirit communication takes place. Sometimes spirit possession takes place. It just depends on what happens. So, just giving you the mechanics of why people sit and utilize symbols to invoke divinities, symbols to evoke ancestresses and ancestors, as well as the physical forms of them as well. Okay, so to get back to the document. So every phase, representative or phase of energy emanating from spirit, meaning Ra and Ra'at, the creator and creatress, as a creative function through time, is a personality, a deity, a phase of consciousness emanating from the divine source of all consciousness, which is Amen and Amenet, or Nyame and Nyamewa, the great Father and Mother Supreme Being. Each deity is either male or female, predominantly expansive or contractive in power, character, behavior. Whose vibrations generate higher or lower pitched sounds, feminine or masculine voices, thereby revealing its own name. So if you take a strainer and you pour some water through the strainer, and then all of a sudden there are 100 streams of water with the life force energy of the creator and creatress, Ra and Ra'et, moving through space and moving through time. A portion of that is broken up into a number of different streams of life force energy. And these are the forces in nature that manifest as the spirits that animate planets, suns, moons, stars, oceans, rivers, atmospheres, and so forth. The different expressions or children of Ra and Ra'at who are still connected, the rays of energy coming from the source and so forth. And they manifest in different ways in creation. Some of them are more expansive. Some of them are more contractive. Some of them are more fiery. Some of them are more watery. Some of them have a more expansive, fiery, masculine expression. Some are more contractive, internalized feminine expression. They have higher or lower pitched sounds, meaning higher or lower pitched voices. They have certain colors, forms, geometric forms in space. So they have form, color, function, sound, personality, divinity, and so forth. These are the building blocks of an entity. A specific form, either predominantly expansive or predominantly contracted, meaning either masculine or feminine, has its own form, own color, own energetic expression, meaning quote unquote personality and so forth, own form of communication. Just giving you the building blocks of what a force in nature actually is. And we are the same thing. We're, as it says a little bit further in the text, the form vehicle through which spirit operates determines its personality consciousness. Is there not one source of air on earth, which all of us share? Is there not one spirit by which all things have life, naturally occurring things? I'm not talking about the white snarl spring. When spirit is housed in the lion, does it not manifest as the peculiar personality and consciousness of the lion? When spirit is housed in the dove, does it not manifest as the peculiar personality and consciousness of the dove? When spirit is housed in a human, does it not manifest as a personality and consciousness peculiar to that person? What of the personality and consciousness of the forces which determine the form of all things, the goddesses and gods, the Abosom, Orisha, Vodou, and so forth? What of these various representatives of divine power operating through the medium of space, which breaks the one source up into a number of different rays of energy, who generate their own sounds, voices, colors and geometric patterns, images and forms, their own genders, powers, male expansive, female contractive, names, personalities, behaviors. And then the Nsamanfo Ancestresses and Ancestors says, who speaks against the goddesses and gods? When people try to say there's no such thing as goddesses and gods, it's idiotic. But they say, okay, so once you know what a divinity is, who speaks against the goddesses and gods? They just define the forces in nature as various representatives of divine power operating through the medium of space, generating their own sounds, because different energy forces generate their own sounds, either higher or lower pitch, own colors, the different movements generate, lighter colors or darker colors, their own geometric patterns, images and forms. We just saw sound waves generate certain forms, their own genders, powers, predominantly expansive as male, predominantly contractive as female, and therefore the unique configuration of sound vibrations emanating from that entity is a configuration that once you repeat it is the entity's actual name. So it generates their own name. Their energy generates their own names, personalities, behaviors. So who speaks against the goddesses and gods? Are you, as an Afurakani man or Afuraitkaitnit woman, African man, African woman, are you not consciousness as physical form, patterned after an image of various colors with your own voice, gender, name, personality, behavior? You on a microcosmic level are structured in the similar fashion as the divinities on a macrocosmic level, with all those different characteristics. Then it says God is God, meaning Amenet and Amen, or Inyamewa and Inyame, has emissaries, representatives in creation. Are you of Amenet and Amen, God is God? Then of course the question is yes, so therefore you have the same thing. Of course it's speaking to Black people only. So when you have those building blocks of who are the forces in creation, spiritual entities who are children of the Great Spirit and so forth, moving through time, broken up into different expressions of energy, moving at different rates and vibrations and generating different colors, forms, sounds, personalities, and so forth. And then when we invoke them, we plug our energy into them, to their geometric form, or their sacred color, or their sacred image, and so forth. Then we create that field of energy that not only invites them to take up residence through spirit possession and communication, but also affects us as well. All right. So just to show a few of these images. So this is our Afurakani Abosom page on the website. And what it's talking about when you hear people with, in the Akan tradition, with names like Kwesi or Akosua, born on Sunday, or Ajua, or Kwajo, or Kojo, born on Monday, or Kwabenan, Abenan, born on Tuesday, Benada, or Kweku and Akua, born on Wednesday, Awukuda, Akuda, or Yao, Ya, or Abba, born on Yauda, Thursday, or Yada, Abada, or Kofi, or Afua, or Afia, born on Fida, which is Friday, and Kwame, or Kwamena, or Ama, or Amemeniwa, or Amewa, or Ami, and so forth, born on Memenida, which is Saturday. They will say that these are day names, Dadin, but they're actually soul names, which is Kra Din, the name Din of the soul. That means your soul was associated or assigned to one of these forces in creation, and you were born on their day to let the community know who you were assigned to. We have a chart that we produced of the Afurakani Abosom, the Akan divinities who govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. So Sunday, the sun, Monday is the moon, and so forth. Tuesday is Benada, Abenada, the planet Bena or Abena, which is Mars. Wednesday, the planet Awuku or Akua, misnomer Mercury, and so forth. Thursday is Yauda, also Yada and Abada. The planets Yao, Ya, and Abba, which they call Jupiter and Uranus and Neptune and so forth. And then you have Afi, which is Venus, and Amemini, which is so-called Saturn and so forth. But these are the male and female divinities that animate these solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, and they move in a cyclical fashion every 7 days, and they affect Earth in a specific manner. And when we're born on their day, it's an indication that we were assigned to that divinity pre-incarnation. So when we see their images, hold on a second. What we did in this particular chart is we showed the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. We showed their popular expression, the spirit forces that animate those solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. We show their popular expression in ancient Kemet. Asar, Aset, Sekhmet, Heru Bedeti, Nebethet, Set, Heru, son of Asar and Aset, Wachet, Nekabet, Het Heru, Amen, Men. Their sacred statuary in the Akan culture, and their popular names as Afurakani Abosom, Awusi, which is Awusi, Asar, Ajua, which is Aset, Abena, Sekhmet, Bena, which is Heru Behudet, Akua, which is Nebethet, Awuku, which is Set, Kwekwanansi, Yao, which is Heru, Abba, which is Nekabet, Ya, which is Wachet, Afi or Afia, which is Het Heru, and Amen Men, which is Amen Men. So we show these sacred forms, and then we also show the 11 major divinities, the 11 major body systems that they govern. We did a whole 6-week course, parts 1 and part 2, on these 11 divinities and the different 11 body systems that they govern and how to align with them ritually and so forth. And then their sacred numbers, and Kane Sem, numerology in the true sense, not the Eurocentric misinformed sense. But just to show a couple of them, just to give you an idea of what's taking place. So, for example, we have an article, books and articles on each one. Books on on our set, and then articles on each one of the other 9. So you have, for example, you have Abena Inakan, who's also called Setchima Inakan. She's called Bedat Kemet, which came Bena or Abena Inakan. She's called Setchimet or Sekmet. She's called Setchima Inakan. That comes from Setchimet or Setchimat or Sekmet or Sekmat in Kemet. Same divinity, same name, same function, same planet, and so forth, from ancient Kanedi Kemet in the Akan tradition and even into North America. When our children born on Tuesday, females are called Abena and so forth. This is what we have. So when you have a divinity and you have an image like this, just like the first images we show with the head Heru as well as Nut with the wave energy and their palms and so forth. So when someone engages in Susuw, in meditation, and they're not just, yes, they'll, meditate and the breathing slows down, eyes are closed and so forth. But in our culture, meditation is about communicating with Abosom, force in creation, or Nsamanfo, ancestresses and ancestors. The force in creation communicating with is either the divinity that governs your head, the matriclan or patriclan divinity that governs, those aspects of your blood circles, or whatever force is governing the situation you find yourself in. If you need healing, and Nana Akua is the individual, the spiritual force that can assist you and guide you towards the kind of plant life that you need to procure in order to heal a specific ailment and so forth. And you're attuning to her so you can get that information. No different than if you went and sat at the feet of an elderess and said, hey, I'm having this issue with my lungs and inflammation. What do I need to use to overcome that? And then she'll say, you need to go and procure this particular herb and prepare it this way and consume it this way. And then you go do what she says, and then you cure yourself of that. In the same fashion, if she transitioned and now she's an ancestress, you can evoke her as an ancestress and say, my child is having this problem. Doctors don't know what to do about it. What did you used to do when babies had this problem? She'll give you the information when you're sitting in meditation. She'll show it to you, speak it to you. You take that information, then you go procure the herb, prepare it the way she said, give it to the child and so forth. Everything works out. That was direct communication. It manifested in a tangible way to solve a specific issue. So you're communicating with an ancestral spirit for guidance, for wisdom, and so forth. Or you can communicate with a force in creation that's directly connected to your blood circle that you came into the world with, to expand your own spiritual power so you can overcome some specific obstacle, whether it's physical or emotional or in the community or in the world and so forth. Communicating with that force in nature, absorbing the energy of that force to overcome some obstacle or to get insight into the nature of something, the way it functions or operates, or how to build a certain, organization, structure, building, whatever it is. That's something that's sound, that's going to be resilient, that's something that's going to benefit our people, whatever it is. So you get insight, knowledge, wisdom, but also empowering yourself or replenishing your power. So we are either communicating with a force in creation when we're meditating, or we're communicating with an ancestral spirit. And sometimes the force in creation is the divinity that governs your head. So you're going internally to attune to that force to learn what you need to learn or what you've been neglecting or ignoring and so forth. One of the ways to do that is when you see people sitting in front of an ancestral shrine and they have an image like this, or a sculpture, or a geometric form like an Adinkra symbol, when we plug our energy into this geometric form with specific colors, specific form, specific structure, and we project our energy into this specific form, it moves through this specific form and generates a field of energy unique to that divinity. When we painted these divinities, we go into spirit communication first. They direct us on how to depict them, what colors we need to use, what forms we need to use, so that when our people project our energy into that specific form, it activates the colors, it activates the geometric form and so forth, generates a unique field of energy unique to that deity's energetic force, and then we absorb that and realign our spirits with that. And sometimes they communicate through that form, or sometimes spirit possession takes place. It just depends. But this is why we utilize forms in this fashion. Hold on 1 second, just to give another quick example of that. Second. So this is Akua in Akan. She's called Nebet-Het in ancient Kemet. She's called Agberu, the wife of Eshu in the Yoruba tradition. She's Koni Koni, the wife of Legba in Vodun. But she's Akua in Akan, the wife of Awuku, Kwekwanansi, and so forth. But Nebet-Het, the wife of Set in ancient Kemet. She operates as the feminine force through the planet Akua, or Mercury. That's her shrine. You see she has the vessel on her head, which also makes up the Medut, spelling her name, Nebet-Het, and so forth. But when you look at her, that vessel, you'll see her praise names in Akan reflect, what she actually governs. So she governs the rain waters of earth and so forth, and which distribute water, but also purify. In the body, she governs the renal system, which facilitates fluid balance in the body, as well as mineral balance in the body. Just like the rains facilitate fluid balance on earth and mineral balance on earth, the renal system, these two vessels here, which is the same vessel here, redistributes water, but also minerals and so forth. So when we're invoking this divinity and she has the vessel on her head and she's called the courieress, she carries the offerings that we give to the ancestral spirits and deities, to the Supreme Being and the divinities, and their offerings of energy to us and so forth. When we invoke a divinity like this, or invoke her specifically, one of her sacred forms is the Akua Badal, which is a reflection of the Ankh from ancient Kemet. So you'll see that we have very often you don't see people are unaware. There are Ankhs, but then you have Ankhs with, arms and hands, just like in Akan culture, the Akua Badal is shown in that fashion. We show the relationship between the Ankh with the Jed pillar. You turn the Akua Badal around and look in the back of the head and you'll see the Jed pillar and so forth. So it's the same ancient symbol that we've been using for Nebet-Het for thousands of years, still used in Akan culture today, still used as the sacred hoodoo doll baby in North America. They're in the same form with the circular head and the two arms out in the straight body and so forth. we continue to utilize that same form in the Hoodoo tradition, which is our Khan ancestral religion, as we did in our Khan culture on the continent, as we did thousands of years before in ancient Kemet. Hold on 1 second. But once again, when someone has an Akuaba doll on their shrine or in their meditation space, when they're engaged in Susuw, that specific form is a form connected to the female divinity Akua or Nebuchadnezzar and so forth. So when you're sitting and meditating in the form of Susuw and you project your energy into that geometric form and it moves through that form, it generates a field of energy unique to the energy of Akua, and then it magnetizes the spirit of Akua herself, as well as ancestresses who were children, daughters of Akua as well. That energy fills the space. You absorb that and realign yourself with it and allow that energy to realign you for healing or recalibrating purposes, purification purposes. And sometimes it leads to direct communication with that force of nature, or sometimes you just need to realign with that energetic force. Sometimes you just need to purify, just no different than sometimes you need certain herbs to purify yourself in the spiritual bath. If you need to realign or calibrate your spirit, and you put certain herbs in the spiritual bath and get in that bath and purify yourself with that, the energetic force that you filled your aura up with, because you use that specific spiritual bath, has realigned you. Sometimes you need to take certain medicines to purge your spirit and purge your physical body of, toxins and so forth. A certain medicine from certain trees and plant life associated with Akua or associated with a different divinity. You need that specific set of herbs that carries the energy of that specific divinity to heal your kidneys or your renal system or a different system. You purify yourself through that specific energy configuration, and then you're realigned. But sometimes you need to communicate with the force of nature itself or an ancestral spirit who carries that same energy as well. But this is why we use images for sacred forms, as we say, for healing, recalibration purposes. When we engage the Susuw meditation process and have specific things on our shrine space or within our space, this is the reason why we do that. These are functional practices. Okay. Okay, so that is the information we want to share tonight. We don't want to go too long. It's been an hour and 10 minutes, basically. So we just wanted to share that. And also tomorrow, meditation instructor certification course begins tomorrow. So you can still register. We still have spaces. Some people registered today. We still have some spaces left available, so you can register for that. Go on the website, and let me pull up the website real quick so you can see. Of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room now before we end the live. Okay, so that's the page. And then you'll see that we have a split payment option if you want to take advantage of that. So you can, the course is a 4-week course. The books that we are utilizing for the course are some of the 31 books that I've published. So those are free downloads. The course is $399. It's basically $99 per week. At the end of the 4 weeks, you get your certification as a meditation instructor. And as we said, you can utilize that to, conduct meditation sessions in different settings, whether it's employment, places of employment, human services agencies, women's shelters, schools, independent organizations, cultural organizations. People typically pay like $100, $200 for you to do a session with some children. You could do it once a week or once every other week or once every few days, depending on what the structure is. They may call you out. Some job may have a conference and they're dealing with alternative methods of assisting people to enhance outcomes for their job performance, or in schools, they have children meditating for a few minutes before the day starts to enhance their learning outcomes and so forth. That's becoming popular in various schools. So they need people to come out and do that. So, very often they'll pay $100, $200, per session, per 30-minute session or 40-minute session and so forth. So some places don't ask for a certification, but many places do. And this is why we decided to put forth the certification process. So you'll have a credential that you can use to bill for services. You can create your own invoice. When they ask for a credential, you have that. And this is why we're doing that. So it's $390 for the certification, the 4-week course, $99 a week for 4 weeks, June 18th to July 9th. We do record the session. So if you missed the session, you weren't able to, do it live, we always send the recording, of the session so you can access it, unlimited access to that. You can also let other people know that if they can't attend the live session, will be archived, so they can still register. And then if they're not able to attend live, they're going to get the session. They can watch it, afterwards. And then if they have any questions that they would have asked during the live session, they can simply email us, and then we can do it that way. So, and the same thing with yourself. If you miss a session, one of the 4 sessions live, you always have the opportunity to check it out. So the split payment option is you can pay $199 up front to secure your spot. And then, this week or next week, you can pay the other $199 just to pay the balance. So we have that option. That's on the website as well. Okay. Okay, so I just want to make sure we don't have any questions in the chat room before we end. All right. Okay, so I want to say Yedase for everybody who tuned in. We are going to have this on the YouTube channel. So if you know anybody who is interested in this kind of information, just let them know this will be up. We'll probably have to do a short edit, the beginning of it, but it'll still be, the live session will be up, and the edited version will be up later tonight and so forth. But the live session will be up as soon as we log off, so people can still access that. So once again, Yedase, we thank everybody for tuning in, and Yebesha Bio, we will meet again.